Common Threads. It's a politics debate show, kind of debate, but the best part is that you, the audience, get to sound off in the comments. Let us know what you think is the conversation rolls along. Ask your questions. As long as they're appropriate-ish, we will put them up on the screen. We do this every Thursday night. We are live in Brooklyn, New York. Our guests are all over the place. Let's bring them in and meet them now. Joining the show tonight, wait, is Jim on the left side? Yeah, let's start with Jim. Jim is the Jim Roberts making his return to Common Thread. Is a contributing editor for the 74, longtime news veteran, good friend of the show. It is great to have you here, Jim. And also here is John Levine for the first time. John, New York Post, soon to be Free Beacon. I don't know what you're most comfortable with, but it's great to have you.
I'm both. I'm trans job. I like both. They're both great.
And I want to make sure I got this right. Jim, you are still contributing editor over at the 74. It's awesome work over there, right?
I am indeed. And listen, thank you very much for inviting me. I won't forget it.
Okay. Yes, that's what we do. We do this to get good favor with Jim.
I won't forget it.
John, I do want to call out the obvious, which are some awesome New York Post headlines behind you. Could you quickly run us through either what's there or your favorites?
The newsroom is full of these classic headlines we have framed, and I'm only in one huddle room with a few. They're all over the place. We're not going to do all of them, but I'll just say we have this Bill Clinton, 92.
Oh, we go.
This is war. There's a few different headlines that are just war, depending on the year.
Yeah.
This is Gulf
We've
War.
had a few of those.
And you know it's an old one because there's no picture. And I don't think we would do a cover with no picture today. I guess the Mets won a World Series. Anyone from New York. That was 86. Anyone from New York knows the Mets doesn't win too much.
Well
so
done,
that was a big deal. John Lennon shot. It was very sad. There's a Trump one over there. We did about 50 of those.
Yeah.
So,
sad.
sad.
Dakota Departments, of course.
I'm not an emotional person.
That's fair. Awesome. Well, it's great to have you on the show, making your debut, and you are soon off to start another gig, and very excited for you. I've been friends with both of you for a long time. Let's kick things off tonight with Democratic dissent. That's the first show we've done since the joint address to Congress on Tuesday night, and also part of the story was how Democrats acted, how they reacted, what they did, what they didn't do. We're going to take a look at, this is Congressman Al Green. 8 in 10 Americans who watched the speech Tuesday night said they thought Al Green, there he is right there, of course, with the cane, that the congressman's interruption of Trump's speech was inappropriate. Just 20% of respondents said the representative from Texas acted appropriately. I'm going to start with Jim Roberts here making his return. Do you think that Democrats, Jim, protested the president's speech on Tuesday the right way? Or was this not the type of event where they should have done any type of protest? Should have just shown up and listened to what the commander-in-chief had to say?
Well, as we know, the whether you call it the joint address to Congress or State of the Union has become more of a boisterous event over the past decade or so. And we can certainly recall a number of times when, particularly, I can think of the early Biden years. I don't need to remind you specifically, but, it has been a thing for the opposing party to make some noise, create some amount of disruption. For that reason, I don't think the Democrats could have or should have sat on their hands. I kind of thought Al Green took one for the team, I think he had a, more or less legitimate gripe. It didn't descend into utter chaos. For a minute or two, I thought it was going to be like a, Central European Parliament or even the House of Commons, but it didn't turn out that way. It had its moment. I do not think the Democrats should have been. This is not something where, they just sit on their hands and say nothing and just swallow 90 minutes of stuff that they can't abide. So I think some measure of dissent was indeed appropriate.
So we had the shaking of the cane from Congressman Green. It was also difficult because obviously those of us watching at home, we could not hear what the congressman had to say. Obviously, he didn't have a microphone in front of his mouth, so people in the gallery could hear. But John Levine, it wasn't just the shaking of the cane, it was the paddles, which quickly went viral because very easy to... Anyone in politics needs to learn, don't show up with things like charts. Don't show up with placards because it's very easily just going to be green screened or photoshopped right out and repurposed for horrific ways. John, what are you thinking as you're sitting there watching Democrats try and interrupt, or some doing a silent interruption, or really what you saw in general?
It's going to be boring. I think they should just kind of sit there quietly and if they're upset with something, they shouldn't clap. But I don't think they should have disruptions. I know obviously Democrats have not been the first people to do disruptions. I remember Joe Wilson screaming, "You lie" at Obama. But he was roundly condemned by everybody for that. And it's unfortunate that we've seen this breakdown in official decorum. And it doesn't help anybody. And as you can see from the Al Green situation, most Americans thought it was stupid. And look, he's a 78-year-old man wagging a cane and no one can hear what he's saying. He's like a crazy person. I ride the bus in New York City, the subways. I see people like that. You try not to make eye contact. I mean, it's not, this is not helping the party. To just have a bunch of cranks wagging a cane. He has a funny blinged out cane too, which I've always enjoyed. And he frequently uses it to make points. He was with Schumer rallying on the Mall a few weeks ago and he was wagging the cane. He's among the crazier members that Democrats have. It's certainly a very large club. And I don't think it was helpful. And clearly the American people also thought it was dumb.
Roughly 7 in 10 speech watchers said they had at least a somewhat positive reaction to the president's speech on Tuesday night, aside from the Democratic distractions for a moment, with a smaller 44% offering a very positive response. Jim, how do you view the role of Democrats right now in this current Congress? You don't have the majority in the House. You don't have the majority in the Senate. It is narrow, so your margins are small for the GOP. But whether it's the theatrics like we saw on Tuesday, and undoubtedly we will continue to see, or it's more on the policy substance. Jim, what are Democrats supposed to do in this moment right now when they got to look down at the other end of Pennsylvania Avenue and they got the president reminding them, I went 7 for 7 in the swing states?
Right. Well, I think they got to get back into the swing states, get away from Pennsylvania Avenue, get out of D.C. I mean, we know now Republicans can't tolerate in-person town hall meetings. They're not going to do them anymore. Somebody needs to listen to people. The Democrats can, should, and will. And I think being in Washington is not right now, is not really where they have the potential to make the biggest long-term impact. I mean, the Democrats have to be thinking, they have to be thinking about November 2026. That's got to be first and foremost in their minds. And I know we're going to get to the question of leadership in the party at some point, but I just think right now, I'm less concerned with leadership and more concerned with members getting into communities, listening. You know, you don't even have to. You don't have to have a constituency there. Go into another county, cross the border, cross into a county, cross into a red county. Listen to people, talk about what's going on, talk about what this administration has the potential or is already doing to them. Let them feel like their voice is being heard. They are being shut down by the very few members of Congress who actually did hold town hall meetings. Some of them walked out in the middle of them. I think it's a great opportunity for Democrats, and that's the place to be, and that's a place where they can make some impact.
John, I want to play. This is Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries, appropriately of Brooklyn, where we are. Here's what he had to say. I think it's some comments on the economy and about Republicans. Let's play this. I'm going to kick it to John after. Here's Hakeem Jeffries.
We have the Republicans on the run on 3 core issues. They are on the run in terms of the economy. In fact, Donald Trump and Republicans are crashing the economy in real time. Donald Trump gave one of the most divisive speeches by a president in American history. 100 minutes. And he barely spent any time on the economy. Why? Because it's collapsing on his watch.
John, love to get your response to that.
Well, I mean, I think all elections, Carville famously said it's the economy, stupid. And I think Hakeem is right that the economy is going to be what certainly the 2026 midterms turn on. I think it's what really all American elections turn on. You know, the reason, put aside everything, real prices were up 19% since Biden took office from when Trump took office. And there's just no way you can win re-election with numbers like that. So obviously, the economy, Trump is not going to turn the economy around in 6 weeks. But obviously, if there continues to be pain in prices and tariffs bring price increases, Democrats can certainly exploit this. But big picture is, I think that on a lot of other issues, Trump is very strong. He has a support among the American people. Look at the border. The border crossings have gone almost to zero. Obviously, they were explosive under President Biden. You had almost 10 million illegal migrants come here during President Biden's term. We don't even know where they are. Tens of thousands of people who've committed homicides in their home countries left into America, and we don't know where they are. And I would love to ask Hakeem Jeffries, what is a woman? That was one of the most devastating campaign issues in 2024. And I don't know that he could answer that. And, Kamala Harris famously said she wanted to provide taxpayer-funded gender reassignment surgeries to criminal migrants incarcerated. So, I mean, until Democrats can get their house in order on a lot of those issues, I still think they have a lot of vulnerabilities. And I'm going to use a 90s era word now, which is they need to triangulate. They need to identify the cancer and the crazy on their side that is inhibiting them, as Bill Clinton once did, and they need to make it their own. So you already see Gavin Newsom, who I know we're going to talk about later, saying, I don't want biological men playing in women's sports. He's triangulating that. You already look at all the people that voted for the Laken-Riley Act. You're already seeing a lot of Democrats cede ground on immigration, and they should. It's common sense stuff. It should be bipartisan.
We have a poll here, and every time we do a poll on the show, we like to bring our viewers something that they know and love. Dan, hit it. I got it all cued from John Levine. All right, so I got to be honest. I wasn't supposed to read this part earlier, but I'm going to revisit 2 polls with you quickly. This is polling, and this goes back to Jim Roberts. 7 in 10 people who watched the speech said, at least a somewhat positive view of what the president had to say. 44% said a very positive response, more directly to President Trump's approval. A Reuters Ipsos poll reported 44% of those surveyed gave him a favorable approval rating of the first month performance in office. Jim, obviously, every time there's a new president...
Wait a second. Can you run that by me again, JD? I'm sorry. 44%
of those surveyed gave the president a favorable approval rating of his first month performance in office.
Okay, 44% underwater.
Underwater, yeah. So, Jim, your thoughts? I mean, obviously, when you have a new president, there's always a little bit of like there's a honeymoon bump.
There's no honeymoon.
And invariably,
we
see those those numbers come down. What do you make of them?
Can you name me one president who has come into office and 6 weeks later is underwater? I don't. Can't remember anybody. I mean, that's devastating to me. 44% is devastating.
When did Biden go underwater? I don't know exactly when, but it was quite early.
I think it was around the Afghan withdrawal, which is it's later in his first term, but I think that was the big pivot for Biden where things really went south. It was the withdrawal in Afghanistan, because until then I think his number he did enjoy that kind of honeymoon bounce.
I mean, it's funny that I had seen yesterday, the day before, I was looking at something that was 47%, which is still underwater. This is just not good at all. And Trump and the Republicans should be incredibly worried about it. Now, obviously, it's really early. A lot can change. It may not change for the better. Usually, your approval ratings go down over time. And if Trump is starting at 44% now, will we be surprised to see him at 42% in a couple of weeks? I don't know. So I think that would be a big concern if I were in the president's circle or, worried about midterm elections in 2026.
By the way, I want to shout the folks over at 38. I know there's a lot of chatter right now about their futures amid layoffs and what happened over at Disney, but our team just pulled up some of the 538 numbers. To some degree, all of us that are in the game are fans of 538. You may not always agree with a lot of the editorial, but any of us that are like nerds for this stuff, like we live on it. The research is incredible, and it really informs the conversation. And I hope that
it really hit me hard. I know Nate from years ago and think very highly of him. I know a lot of people have issues with some of the things that he's said and done, but he pioneered a way of thinking about polling that truly revolutionized the business. And I think in some ways made us much smarter about what works and what doesn't work in polling. So it's sad.
Yeah, and we never want to see layoffs in any industry, but we had 538, and I didn't expect to say anything or bring that up. But John and Jim, hang on one second, because we love to pay the bills here, and we have a sponsor, and we got to get to them. And what a time to talk markets, by the way, for a financial services company that we got. My God, hello. If you're out there and you're looking at the stock market headlines today and you're saying, geez, the S&P fell another 1.8%. What is going on here? Man, do I have the platform for you folks. No better time than with market volatility to sign up for an account and at least become a more informed investor with an account over at public.com. You can invest in everything: stocks, options, bonds, crypto. You can get a locked-in 6.6% yield right now. It will not change if the Fed cuts interest rates. There's chatter of 2 cuts, 3 cuts, 25 basis points. Will they cut more? Will inflation be too high? Regardless, you're locked in at that rate. Doesn't matter what Jay Powell and his friends have to say. Public is different from the competition because Public gives you the tools you need to become a more informed investor. They have a really cool built-in, there we go, Dan, with the sound effects, crushing it, bro. They have a built-in AI tool. It's called Alpha. It doesn't just tell you if an asset's moving, it tells you why that asset's moving, so you understand the performance of your portfolio that much better. We made this really cool QR code, so go ahead and scan that or head on over on your browser of choice to public.com/CT. Build your multi-asset portfolio with Public today. Man, is there ever a time? This is like really the one right now, because we're dealing with like multi-sessions of like down 1%, down 2%. There's a lot of red on the big board over on Wall Street. buy. Would say buy the buy.
I say buy.
I would say buy the. Listen, Eric Trump said buy the dip, and then to me, I'm like, if you're the sitting president's son and you're telling investors to buy the dip, that's something to pay attention to. All right, let's bring in Jim and John back into the conversation here. So we did the Jeffries one. Okay, can we do this TikTok one? Because I'd love to get John and Jim's take on this. Somehow Democrats releasing this new TikTok. It was viral all over the internet today. Not necessarily for the reasons some had hoped. Let's take a look. Here we go. Music's awesome. Great trend.
Yeah.
I like the punches there from the representative. John, obviously, Democrats, they're trying something. It's a different demographic. Obviously, it's easy to be there on Twitter and to make fun of it, but they're doing something. Give me your thoughts as to what that thing is.
I don't claim to be an expert in these things, so I can't tell you what is the thing they should be doing. But it's like I know that's not it, and I know seeing these geriatrics like like it's just not. It reminds me, there's a meme of Ferris. I do not know the origin of this meme, but it's like Ferris Bueller in a classroom, and he's much older than everybody, and he's dressed up like a kid, and he says, "Hello, fellow kids," and it's just not. It's not good, and I don't. You know, there was a Supreme Court justice that says, something's. I know it's horrible when you see it. I don't know how to describe it any other way. You know, when you see it, this is horrible stuff. I can't quite put my finger on why it's awful. But, Jim, these are your people. Maybe you can.
I'm not going to defend it. I'll have to back away.
Do the kids?
Calming
Do you
down.
have kids, Jim? I don't know. Are they inspired by? Maybe we're out of it.
I don't. At least when this is concerned, I don't know.
Yeah.
We're not out of it.
I think so. A for effort. Let's keep trying to appeal to those boomers. That's what I'll say.
Make it stop. Make
it stop. Jim's like, take it off the street. Yes, obviously it's a popular TikTok trend. It is, a choose your fighter thing. Obviously it's easy to criticize when you see that. People are like, oh, you have nothing better to do. Things like this in reality, they take 60 seconds to produce. You're a communications director for someone. You're saying, Senator, I need you to stand there and do this for a video and just trust me. That's what I think a lot of this is. It's younger staffers on the Hill that are more or less tapped into various TikTok trends. They're telling their boss, this sounds silly, but I need you to do this for this video. Yeah. And it goes out.
I think we should fire them. Let's doge them.
Are videos like this helping, hurting, Jim? There you go. This I think what John was referencing.
Hello, fellow kids.
There you go. How do you do, fellow kids?
Tell your EP. He's a great man for finding that.
It does kind of have that feel.
And actually,
but Jim,
I have thought about it. Well, it's authenticity. It's the lack of authenticity that kills people. Zoomers have such a good nose for realness. And I think that's one of Trump's assets is he goes up there, he plays YMCA, bops around, and he just lives in his moment and he owns it, and it's him. And he has a certain authenticity to his presentation that this is very far from.
This is interesting because I've got two really interesting media vets here. And so, Jim, I'm curious your thought on, what is the media strategy that you think Democrats should be leaning into if it's not these type of TikToks? Obviously, the rules of the game for media and political media distribution are changing by the week. It's a big part of the reason that we do the show in the format that we do on the platforms that we do. And it's difficult enough for us who are in the media full-time to figure out where the puck is going, let alone be a sitting or aspiring member of Congress trying to capitalize on the new rules of media to reach people where they are. But, Jim, where do you see that Democrats should go, or anyone should go, to try and get a message out there in a decent way?
Well, it's the where and the what are two different things. It's good that the Democrats are recognizing the potency of viral video or, short form video. It's good that they understand the value and the potency of platforms, whether Instagram, TikTok. They certainly understand how the Republicans were able to use them well. But you don't use them if you can't use them well. So let's not do bad stuff on them. Listen, Trump has given the Democrats everything that they need. They don't need to gimmick it up. He is crashing the economy. He's doing it as Hakeem Jeffries said, in real time. He is doing it every day. He did it this week. He will probably do it next week. And this was a guy who said on so many occasions he would lower grocery prices, which is a word he loves to pronounce. He would lower grocery prices starting on day one. Well, he hasn't. He won't. He doesn't know how to, and he doesn't have the determination to do it. It just doesn't, it means nothing to him personally, so it's not going to get done. This is what this is where the Democrats win. He has gifted them and will continue to do so. And so they take it, they exploit it. They show it every day. They remind people. I mean, at some point we're going to want to stop talking about egg prices, but we haven't talked about it enough. I mean, I went, and not just eggs, talk about coffee prices. I paid a 50-cent surcharge today on coffee. Did you know there was a coffee problem? Okay, there is. At least where I buy my coffee. So
I
just
buying
think
coffee at all. You should be making your own coffee like me. Susie Orman says buying coffee.
I get out every once in a while. I'm not always around.
Jim wants to support the local economy. I understand.
Yeah.
Buying coffee is one of the most uneconomic things. The cup is like $4, $5. Terrible, Jim.
Okay, I'll stay indoors more.
Drink your coffee indoors and then go out.
There you go. That's fair.
So my point is the Democrats have plenty to work with. They have plenty to message with. And if they don't take this opportunity now, they just need to give it up.
John, finally on this, before we're going to get to Gavin Newsom in just a second, but John, I want to give you an opportunity to respond to that, how Democrats should try and message in this new media environment. And similarly, what have you seen from Republicans that have made you say that person gets it? Right? Or that's the thing that do. And maybe we saw that with the election, going on these types of podcasts. And you're like, you know what? That is the way that this should be done right now.
I don't know about Republicans getting it. I mean, yeah, I mean, the economy is always the most important issue all the time in every election. It's kind of boring to say that, and we kind of keep track of that, but it is. I mean, I think it's unfair to go at them on egg prices because obviously there's an avian flu situation that's led to a temporary drop. But look, tariffs will probably make things more expensive, at least in the short term. And even President Trump and his team has acknowledged that. There's been a tariff pause. And that's something they need to work through. But yeah, if Democrats zero in on the economy in the midterms, it's hard to extrapolate because that's way far in the future. I don't know what the economy is going to look like at the midterms. Nothing right now is relevant. We're not voting again for a very long time. But, the economy, if it's not doing well, should obviously be Democrats' first, second, and third issue. But I guarantee you, Jim, they're just going to talk about pronouns and some other stupid shit and blow it. And tell me I'm wrong. Look in my eye and tell me you think that's totally wrong.
Well, I will say they will learn their lesson. They will not, some will. But as a group, they will not be banging you over the head with pronouns.
Yeah. But Jim, can you tell me what a woman is?
I live with one.
Well, what?
I live with one. Is that what he said?
Yeah,
I live with one.
That's okay.
I think I have a pretty good idea.
Okay. I mean, it's like I say it in jest, but like Democrats have to have an answer for that question, or you're not serious. So
yeah, I get that. I do, and I agree with Jim that I think this is the sort of thing where
I can tell you what a woman is.
If you want to give an answer to your own question, go ahead.
Okay.
A woman has 2 X chromosomes.
There we go.
Woman.
All right, that's a great viral clip. No, but I do appreciate it. And I'm not saying that in jet.
I'd like to hear from the party of science if that's true or not.
Fair. And obviously this is, and I got to admit, like if we were having this conversation before the election, I'd sit there and be like, I don't really think this is.
Why is that a great viral clip? It's like saying 2 + 2 is 4. I guess it's a great viral clip in the
No, I just did the delivery is what I meant.
You should make it a viral clip, but it's just like the sky is blue, 2 X chromosomes, woman. Wow, I'm not even that smart. We have a Supreme Court justice that couldn't even answer that.
If we were having this conversation before the election, my attitude, and this is where I always like to admit where I've evolved and where I've been wrong. Before the election, I didn't think this was that big of a deal. I thought this was something that was kind of just being litigate or talked a bit about, and it's impossible to know what exactly motivated voters to the polls. But it is tough for me to sit there today and say the issue of biological men playing in women's sports, etc., is not as big of an issue as I thought it was, because it clearly is. And clearly in the hearts and minds of a lot of people. And I admit, like, I've learned a lot in this election. I was like, all right, I stand corrected.
All right. It's just basic fairness and fair play in life in America. And it just, that issue spoke to Americans' sense of equal treatment. And it was such an obvious one to everyone except national Democrats. So I don't know, but I'm sure they'll be at it again.
No, but I mean, some may. To Jim's point,
I actually don't think we'll be at it again. I really don't.
You shouldn't make it so easy for the right. So I hope you're right, Jim. I hope it can be something on issues, real issues.
I guarantee you there will be so many other issues to discuss.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
To Jim's point, and he says, one national Democrat who is trying to change the tone and tenor on this exact issue is someone we've already talked about, but we'll hear from him or take a look here. This is California Governor Gavin Newsom taking a different approach. Not only did he launch a podcast this week, but he interviewed, of all people, Charlie Kirk for the first sit down. I appreciate this. Newsom now speaking out against biological men playing in women's sports, speaking out against the term Latinx, speaking out against defunding the police, the idea of cancel culture. John, to Jim's point, Jim sits there and says, listen, not going to be all Democrats. Some Democrats are going to essentially have learned their lesson, sing the tune a little differently. Is Newsom here? It's early days here, John Levine, but is Newsom showing Democrats how to do that pivot to the center with any degree of effectiveness?
Yeah, I mean, the principle is correct. He's trying to triangulate on issues he knows are loser. The problem is, is this podcast being filmed in French Laundry? I mean, we still have acres and acres of wreckage in Los Angeles thanks to the gross mismanagement of Karen Bass. And look, as the governor of that state, the buck does stop with him, and he has a tremendous amount of baggage going into any presidential race. So he's right on those issues needing to pivot, but I think that he's a fundamentally flawed messenger for many reasons, and there's more probably still to come that we don't even know about.
Jim, I'm curious your thoughts, and they could be about Governor Newsom individually in terms of like a leader or a potential leader of the Democratic Party, but also to have someone come out and essentially say, oh yeah, we were wrong. The way my party talks about this stuff is wrong. And clearly try and do a far more centralized, reasonable type of voice that speaks to the silent, moderate majority of voters in this country, which I think is what he's going for.
I think first it's healthy. It's incredibly healthy to have someone, whoever it is, someone of stature within the party to come out and talk honestly, admit that the party made mistakes. There should not, listen, this is going to sound really old-fashioned, but I don't like litmus tests. I don't think there should be a litmus test that determines, okay, you're a Democrat. There should not be a litmus test that determines that you are a Republican. Maybe those days are over. Maybe it's just too quaint of a thought. But to have a Democrat come out and say, okay, we need to think about we need to approach things differently is incredibly healthy. Whether we agree with all of them or not, I don't know that really matters at this point, but it's really healthy to get out there, not just be stridently defensive of what obviously did not work last year. So I welcome it. Do I think that Gavin Newsom is the answer that the Democratic Party needs? No, I don't. And I do not think that, when all is said and done and we're looking at the ticket in 2028, I do not expect him to be at the head of it. I could be very wrong, but I don't expect that to happen. But I do think that having him come out and talk like this is incredibly healthy and smart.
Quick follow-up to Jim. Is there someone you do expect to be at the top of that ticket? I know it's early.
It is early. There are people who I would like to see involved in the race. And I don't think enough about Gavin Newsom to say I don't even want him to run if he wants. I don't think the party will nominate him, and I don't think he is the right messenger. I'll agree with John.
Now, I have questions for both of you. What do you think the likelihood that Gavin Newsom has to walk some of that back by, end of next week?
Oh, like a play to the primary base,
Like,
you mean?
oh, I didn't mean that. Oh, actually, I've rethought this. Oh, as Seth Moulton did when he said,
I don't think he will.
All right, he won't walk back any of it. Okay, I hope you're right, because Democrats do need to move to the middle on these issues, like Latinx.
But again, we are 6 weeks into a new administration.
Oh yeah.
I think he's got a little bit of a cushion here. He can do and say some of these things. I don't think a week later he's going to be walking any of it back. Yeah, we'll see what happens in a couple of years, but no.
Right. I think my answer would be not next week, but as we get to a primary crush, and you're up there with 30 Democrats like we had in 2019 who are all running for president, and they're all jockeying for position, and that is when Harris made those comments that John referenced earlier that came back to haunt her, right? Is that and it's not quite the Cuomo like campaign and what is it? Campaign and poetry, govern in prose, but it's like campaign one way for your base and then kind of do like this very awkward pivot to the center for a general. John, do you sit there at all and look at this and say, yeah, I don't like Newsom necessarily, but I do give him credit that at least he sat down. Not only did he say these things, but also he sat down with Charlie Kirk for the first.
Yeah, that was pretty. That was smart.
I guess in my world, it's not a big deal to sit down with people you disagree with. I do it all the time. It's not like an accomplishment. And I'm talking to someone that doesn't agree with me. I'm glad that he wasn't terrified of Charlie Kirk, a 31-year-old, conservative activist, the sitting governor of California. He's going to have to sit down with a lot of people who disagree with him if he wants to be a viable candidate, because he's got to understand where the majority of Americans are coming from. And let's be very clear, this is the majority of Americans. Trump is the majority of Americans. He got a popular vote this time. It wasn't 2016. It was I know we can say mandate, we could say no mandate, but it was a clearly decisive win in a way that it was not the first time around.
Yeah.
And I think
majority of American voters. Let's just be clear about that. The majority of American voters.
Well, what other voters are there?
No. You said the majority of Americans.
Yeah, the majority of everyone
majority of American voters.
Majority of American voters.
I don't mean to split hairs, but I just think that's always an important way of looking.
Well, everyone has a right to vote, except the felons.
Absolutely. Right.
So
if you don't
vote, that's on you.
Yeah. Not a spectator sport. Not a spectator sport. God, I wish we can get those numbers up, right? That's the one that kills me. I look back at like the percentage of Americans that vote. And I'm like, God, 63% of people. Are you kidding me? The other 4 people just sit at home. No disrespect to those of you watching the show who haven't voted. I'm sure there are some of you. But also,
I have disrespect to them. I think they should vote.
The one thing that's a constant on the show since we started in September is just every guest we've had, for the most part, when this issue comes up, liberal, conservative, or whatever, everyone's just like, God, how do you not vote? That's like that's really the common theme to the whole show. It's like, man, we should get a vote.org sponsorship for that. A common thread. It definitely is. Let's do, what do you want to do? Do you want to squeeze in the other break before we get to? Yeah, let's do the other ad break, and then we're going to hit tariffs right on the other side of this. Jim and John, hang out 1 second. Folks, have you heard about public.com? Scan the QR code to learn more. If you're serious about the world of investing, you got to know about public.com. You can invest in everything: options, stocks, crypto, bonds. You can get a locked-in 6.5% yield that will not change if the FOMC cuts interest rates with a diversified portfolio of investment-grade and high-yield bonds. Do all of your investing in one place with AI-powered fundamental data and custom analysis. It's different from the competitors because it gives you the tools you need to make informed investment decisions, like their built-in AI tool called Alpha. Tells you why a stock is moving, not just that a stock is moving, gives you some context. Is it framed around earnings? Is it framed around guidance? Does it have to do with the Fed or the presidency or tariffs? You get all the information that you need to know so you become a more informed investor. Understand what's driving the performance of your portfolio and build your multi-asset portfolio with Public today. Public.com/CT to learn more, or please scan that QR code. Thank you to our sponsors. We enjoy keeping the lights on of the show, and it's great to have you all. Okay, so speaking of tariffs in the economy, John and Jim, the S&P 500 down another, I think it was 1.7% when I left work today. All election day gains, the so-called Trump bump, completely erased. We are trading lower in the S&P 500 right now than we were at the close of day on Tuesday, November 5th. Trump did admit this week, the president, there would be short-term pain. I believe we have sound. This is Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick this week. Let's take a listen.
Back. This is the golden age, towels, and you're talking about it today.
Are we going to make all those things in the United States? None of them are made here. TVs, electronics.
Why did we stop? Because we entered into an illogical world of low tariffs here and high tariffs there. So everybody could go find the cheapest place in the world. I mean, think about it. Why would a factory that was making cars in Michigan move to Canada? Because I tell you why. Because they did it because there weren't unions in these locations. We harmed American workers in exchange for what? The prices of cars didn't come down. Donald Trump understands it. He's going to bring it back.
John, I got to say, you know, for all the back and forth on the tariffs and the market volatility, and there's no shortage of market volatility with this one, man. This has been like a wild ride. But, John, I got to say, to the president's credit, you have had companies like Volvo and Honda, and there are some others, but those are the big ones this week, who've said, okay, we are going to move some production that was planned for another country and bring it back to, listen, man, I do try and call balls and strikes as fairly as I can. So you do have some sense from the big corporations to say we need to mitigate the worst of the tariff policies. The president is right. We will reshore some production. Give me your sense on how this has played out so far, John.
I first of all, I couldn't care less about, are the markets up today? Are they down today? I know someone with your expertise, JD, surely knows that any individual market volatility doesn't mean anything. It's all about long-term trends. And look, if you don't want to pay the tariffs, you can bring your business to the United States and you won't have to pay the tariffs. That's really the name of the game here. I think that's the ultimate end goal, is to bring a lot of these companies back to America and get them paying corporate income taxes and get their workers being paid in America and them spending money and them paying income taxes, and all about generating more revenue for our economies instead of Mexico or China or Japan or wherever else. And tariffs are not a new thing. President Reagan put 100% tariffs on Japan in the 1980s. Presidents of going back to Nixon have put tariffs on different countries and different industries over the years as the circumstances required. So there's really nothing new here. It's not like we have to go back to McKinley to find this stuff. This is a very common tactic done by presidents of both parties in the defense of American workers, and I have no problem with it whatsoever.
And Jim, to John's point, not only have presidents in both parties done it, I don't think it's been like a professional sport the way that Trump makes it, because he loves the word tariffs. Right. But President Biden did very quietly continue many of the existing trade policies, the tariff policies from President Trump. Yeah. And I agree with John in that, one day's volatility does not a market make. However, this is a uniquely headline-focused, optics-driven presidency, I would argue. Right.
Well, listen, I totally agree. Previous presidents used tariffs, some cases liberally, lowercase liberal. And in many of those cases, the tariffs lasted for more than an hour or two. These tariffs didn't even start. He caved before they were a day old, and Trump caved. I'm stunned by this. I am blown away. And here's the point. You talk about the stock market. You're right. Volatility all over the place. The word we need to talk about is confidence, because that's what that red ink is, a lack of confidence. Investors do not have confidence in this man. They do not have confidence in his administration. What happened today was really interesting. So Trump saw the red ink this morning. He saw it at noon. He saw it when he was eating his Big Mac. And then he's like, sheesh, what are we gonna do? And so he cancels he postpones the tariffs because of the red ink. But guess what? JD, you knew this. Red ink was still there. There was a moment, maybe things got better for 10 minutes, but basically the S&P ended today pretty much where it was this morning. And that to me says investors have no confidence. Listen, bad policy is bad policy. I don't like bad policy, but I like even less confusion, chaos, and the impression that you convey of utter incompetence. I mean, I'm not an investor, but if I were, I would have my money. It would be all in cash right now because I have no idea what this man is going to do tomorrow. That's not policy. That's seat of the pants, making your decisions on a whim. This has got to change. The economy will crash if this does not change.
Well, we may not know what he's going to do tomorrow, but we do know what he just did a few minutes ago. Let's hit some breaking news right now, and I want to get. It is a little market. It is a little market focus. Wait, pause those tariffs. We got the BTC reserve, don't we? Can we full screen that?
Oh yeah.
Oh.
So obviously tomorrow is supposed to be the highly anticipated crypto. Kind of like crypto czar meeting at the White House, but this
is the 5 coins that he and his friends all own. Is that right? Is that what we're talking about?
Those would be the meme coins, also known to many as shit coins. Yes, of course. But this is basically taking the strategic petroleum reserve that we have, taking that model with Bitcoin. A lot of Bitcoin enthusiasts they're very split in the community. A lot of people say, "Great, this legitimizes it. This puts it on the balance sheet of the federal government. That's awesome. It's a legitimate investable asset." Others say, well, why are you diluting the pool? Bitcoin is very limited here. But just to walk through the basics here, AI czar David Sachs said the reserve will be funded exclusively with Bitcoin seized in criminal and civil forfeiture cases. That's been a big one because you kind of seize these from bad actors and the government doesn't always know what to do with them. Oftentimes they have an auction. They put them back on the market. Trump's like, no, we're going to keep them. Ensuring taxpayers pay no financial burden. Again, this just broke 10 minutes ago. The order also establishes a U.S. digital asset stockpile managed by the Treasury to hold other confiscated cryptocurrencies. John, I'm curious if you have any. Are you a Bitcoin enthusiast by chance? You're into some cool things, man.
Sliver of Bitcoin. I would not say I'm an enthusiast. A lot of people I know who own more than one Bitcoin tend to be drug addicts. There seems to be a very strong correlation there. And I'll just say it doesn't surprise me at all that they're getting a lot of civil asset forfeiture in Bitcoin because I'm sure it's used for a lot of insane illegal activity. But I generally support the idea of Bitcoin as an asset class, and I think it should be mainstreamed because it's right now, for ordinary investors, just very, very risky, and really no one knows what they're doing. So when you mainstream it and you get more traditional funds getting into Bitcoin, you can open it up to more normal investors, people like me who I'm not good at math. That's why I'm a reporter, and I can just get an ETF with a little Bitcoin, and I know it's a safe thing. And there's a lot of coins out there that are not safe, and hopefully we can create systems that steer people into the safer coins and not the Kim Kardashian coin or whatever the next thing might be.
Or to Jim's point, a lot of the Trump peddled that was so bizarre. The Trump meme coins that were peddled on the eve of the election, getting those things out.
Yeah.
Still that to me was always a head scratcher.
Get rid of those. Yeah. Hopefully.
Yeah, those were ones I think even as some of Trump's biggest fans in crypto space for the
Wasn't there a Hawk Tuah coin for a second?
There was a Hawk Tuah coin, absolutely.
Yeah, how many do you own, baby?
Listen, we can make a common threads shitcoin if we want to. I don't know what the appetite. Common coin. Now we're cooking. Bitcoin is down 4% on this news. It's down almost 4.5% today. Down 5% now. This thing is just no one wanted to hear this news. Bitcoin is down 8% year to date. It is up 28% over the last 52 weeks. The 52-week chart's really interesting because obviously we had a huge pop after the election in November, and then it kind of settled. Jim, I'm curious your thoughts more on not so much Bitcoin as an asset moving, this and that, like a market show, but the community of Bitcoin holders and crypto enthusiasts, because for a long time, and I think this kind of gets to a conversation that I'm fascinated with, which is how did Democrats lose Silicon Valley? Because all of these tech Bitcoin bros, they were all in for Obama at one point, and they could not be further from the Democratic Party today. And I think largely part of it, I would assume, is that Trump talked about doing stuff like this, the way that other politicians weren't willing to do.
Yeah. He did. I think he was very effective and smart in embracing this. At a time when the Biden administration was incredibly wary of it and insistent upon regulating it in ways that other asset classes were not regulated. I'm sure some people will make a ton of money off of Bitcoin. I will not be one of them because I'm not going to risk my money on something like this. But I'm not fundamentally opposed to it. I don't think, to the extent that the government concerns itself with regulating other forms of assets, it should treat Bitcoin in the same fashion.
We have extended comments here from David Sachs. This is long. Hey, this is the new Twitter, man. If you got a badge, you can write whatever you want. He says the reserve will be capitalized with Bitcoin owned by the federal government that was forfeited. It's estimated the government owns 200,000 Bitcoin. Never been a complete audit. That's another big one, right? It's obviously kind of part of the general Doge audits, I suppose. John, does the average American care? Should the average American care if they don't?
No, I don't think this is an issue anyone normal cares about, no.
Yeah. But JD, here's something I don't know, and maybe you could enlighten me. What is the reserve supposed to do?
I think the idea of the reserve, much like the petroleum reserve, is like if there's a crunch, then the government has a say to be able to release it and kind of.
What end?
Well, we don't know how much. We don't know how much they're gonna hold.
No, I mean, but
in the case like we had with President Biden when oil prices spiked, you had the Strategic Petroleum Reserve that the White House could release, and it eases pressure and brings down pricing. And I think my understanding is, the idea is that if you have this out there and it's a more legitimate investable asset, God forbid there's other parts of the economy that come on shaky ground, the government has a firm stake in the most popular digital currency, the most popular digital asset, and can release it if they want to. They can auction it the way that the Treasury does with a lot of other assets, and it allows the government to have control. And I think ultimately, that's been the big problem in the eyes of the government for Bitcoin enthusiasts, which is that people loved it because it was this wild, wild west asset that the government had nothing to do with. And I think Trump wants some skin in the game here.
Yeah.
Okay, Trump said today, John, here we go. John, the president did say today, quote, "I don't look at the stock market."
Yeah.
That's very healthy. That's very healthy.
You believe that? You believe Trump doesn't look at the stock market?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I don't think he's running our country right now. I don't think his immediate portfolio is the most important thing. But I'm sure he obviously looks at the stock market. But I don't think it's healthy for Americans to look at the stock market every day. I have some amount of money in the stock market. I think I last looked at it 2 weeks ago. You know what? It's okay. I think it's unhealthy to look at it more than that. And you're going to make yourself crazy if you're up a penny, down a penny. It's just not worth it. I live a very calm life for a reporter, and it definitely would not be improved by looking at the stock market every day. So no, I don't think he actually necessarily looks at it every day. But if there's a crisis or something, obviously, he'll look at it. But no, I believe that.
He looked at it today.
Sure he did. But you know what? I didn't, because I don't care. Because single day fluctuations don't matter.
No, but the thing with Trump is, now we know this. I don't know how we know this, but we know this from Trump 1.0. He saw, and I assume this still is the case, that Wall Street is a barometer of his, not his worth per se, but how he's doing. It's instant polling for Donald Trump. And we know he craves polling. He pays attention he looks at those every day he can. So I think he knows where the market is going every day. And I certainly know that on days when there's buckets of red ink, he knows that.
I'm not going to say he's not aware. I'm sure he is aware of it.
Yeah. Well, and if he's not, I'm sure Bessent is.
Yes.
I'm sure Lutnick is.
Yours are on top of it.
But
I don't want to say they're not.
No, of course. I do think it's interesting media study to watch when Howard Lutnick gets rolled out on Fox Business and CNBC, because the timing's not by accident. The timing happens during intraday trading when things are very choppy, and that's when Lutnick comes on air and says, by the way, the president just said he's going to roll back some of these tariffs, and that tends to be like a boost in the market. So I do think there's like a finger on the pulse of what's happening day to day, but I agree with and I really like John's overall thesis, which is like you will drive yourself insane. Unless you're a speculator and you're a day trader or you cover financial services. Like if you're an average American with a portfolio of 401k, some exposure to the market, correct, you will drive yourself nuts checking every day.
I'm in the news industry, so I read it every day. But if you're not in the news industry, you shouldn't be as plugged into news as a lot of people are. I think it's very unhealthy. I think there should be a certain amount of news you consume each day, and that's it. But you get these 24/7 junkies in front of cable news or Twitter all day long, and a lot of them, their brains have been turned to mashed potatoes, and I see it on both sides. It's not a liberal con phenomena, but I think, as with the markets, as with news, you need to limit your intake for the mental health.
Well, it's good to know that none of the three of us are like that.
No,
Yeah.
not at all. We all have completely
totally
healthy relationships with breaking news. Or in the words of John Levine, we must triangulate from time
Good
to
work,
time.
folks. I didn't pick it up with Bubba.
Yeah. Well, listen, it's what's old is new again. You give Bill Clinton credit, but I'm giving you credit for bringing that into the show because I'm going to use it all the time now. Okay, we got a few minutes left here, and Jim, you know what this segment is all about. John, you do not. You haven't done it with us yet, but this is truly the fan favorite segment we've built the whole show around. Japan Dan, hit it.
Say something.
Nice.
Okay.
Am I on? Yeah. And we're back. All right, good. We got a tech note there. So Jim knows how this works. Not all of our viewers. We got a lot of viewers on Twitter X specifically. So thank you all for tuning in. John, the whole thesis of this, the whole point is that we got political division. We got lots of finger pointing. We got this and that. And so I challenge our guests to say something nice. And John, I'm going to start with you, and I'll give Jim Roberts the final word.
Oh, God.
John, do you have
Something
anything nice to say? Can you say something nice, more specifically, about Democrats or Democratic voters? I'd like to hear. And this isn't like a tongue-in-cheek type of thing. I really want you to say something nice.
It's an earnest question. You're giving me a gotcha on say something nice. Look, I think Democrats love America. I think their voters love America. I think that our differences are not as significant as the media and certain partisan actors on both sides would have people believe. And my primary takeaway when I visit Park Slope, which is basically a communist settlement in Brooklyn, is that they're good people and they're terribly misguided, but and I'm not as alien to them as they might think. And we are always struck by how much more we have in common than we disagree on. So that's my something nice to say.
That was really well done. Jim, I'm going to ask you a comparable question, but how about for MAGA voters and Trump enthusiasts out there with whom you may disagree?
Well, I'm going to pivot just a tiny bit, JD, and you may never have me on the show again as a consequence of what I'm about to say. I'm going to say something sympathetic, okay, if you don't mind. It may not be nice. Say
something sympathetic. No, go ahead, Jim.
No, I've been feeling this sympathy for Marco Rubio recently. Okay, now.
Speaking of, as I take my water sip.
I don't know how tall he is. I know he's referred to sometimes as Little Marco. I know that was one of Trump's things. But, here's a guy who I actually believe, and this is really serious. I believe that I don't even think we've uttered the word Ukraine in this entire show, which may not be a bad thing. But anyway, I believe that Rubio is very much like the traditional Republican, the traditional kind of Russia hawkish view of world affairs. And I do believe that when it comes to what's going on in Ukraine and when it comes to the relationship the United States has with Ukraine vis-a-vis relationship with Russia, I think Rubio wants to do what I would say is the right thing. But boy, I cannot remember a more diminished Secretary of State in really the big foreign issues than Marco Rubio. I mean, you have to go back to William Rogers, who was Secretary of State under Nixon when Kissinger was constantly bigfooting him and making all of the important decisions. So, Secretary Rubio was skewered on Saturday Night Live the other night. And if you haven't watched it, it was not a bad sketch, so it's worth going back and looking. Anyway, I have some sympathy for Marco Rubio today.
This is not very nice, Jim.
How about something nice, though, Jim?
I don't want to be pedantic here.
Yeah, I'm never coming back. You're never going to have me.
It's all right. I will give. I respectfully. I appreciate the answer, but John gets very high marks for his response and say
Okay.
something nice tonight.
I definitely win that round.
Yeah, it was solid. Well, I'm going to go ahead and say something nice, which is very easy for me to do, about both our excellent guests, because they are both longtime media vets. They're also both longtime friends and former colleagues of mine, both of them. And I'm very grateful for them, for their expertise, for their conversations tonight. I hope you will both be back. Jim, wherever your travels take you, here or anywhere else. And then John, of course, as you head on over to the Free Beacon down there in D.C., I wish both of you the best. That is John Levine, New York Post, soon to be Free Beacon, soon to be a DMV resident, and the great Jim Roberts, contributing editor at the 74. Jim, John, thank you both, fellas. Great to have you tonight.
Enjoyed it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for having me.
Right on. All right, time now for, do we have an OT graphic? Am I supposed to pause?
We do. Choose whatever you want to pause.
All right, pause.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Welcome to Common Threads Overtime. The not talking during the last graphic thing, though. I did okay there? My voice cracked. I did okay? Yeah, no, because sometimes I jump the gun here. Folks, Dan Mesco, Taylor Craig, live here in studio for a little OT. Overtime. Fellas, first of all, before we get to the meat of the action, can we shout out Jim and John tonight? How good are these guys, huh? Brought the high heat, different levels of media experience and views, and Jim is great as always, and I knew John would crush it. John is
copious Bill Clinton references, so galore.
More than we usually have, yeah,
way more.
For sure. John's a super funny dude, and Jim is as good a person and a news sense as it gets, and it's just awesome to have them both. What's top of mind for you? Let's start. I do want to start with Taylor if I can, because Taylor's rocking the best shirt in the room right now.
Hey, thank you. I actually only wear it for the compliment, so I appreciate that. Yeah, I just figured that we can stay on the politics if we want, but also there's some news coming out. The FAA is halting a lot of flights to Florida after SpaceX had a testing failure. Oops. It looks like the Starship went up in flames over Florida. So this is the second mistaken flight that Starship was supposed to accomplish. There's actually some pretty wild video I wanted to share.
Oh shit! I love the Starship launches.
If we can get VO up here in a second, you can see like this is actually a pretty great one right here. Let me see if I can cue this back up. Look at this.
You want to hear it?
No, it's okay. You don't need to hear it.
I can hear it in my IFB.
Oh yeah, you can hear it.
Yeah, I'll go full screen with it. Look at that. Isn't that incredible? Yeah. So the SpaceX Starship blew up for the second consecutive time. Of course, Elon Musk on Twitter is like saying it was like an all-out success and everything is perfect. But yeah, it's just sort of like an interesting. I mean, this is definitely a cool ass video. We should show this. This is, I think, the success of it. This is the booster that was coming back down and was caught, or at least it landed.
This looks like AI.
I know, it literally looks fake when
this looks like a video game.
able to land these things.
The chopsticks, yeah.
The chopsticks are out.
Wait, so this was today or no?
This was today.
Yeah, so this part worked. This was the Mozilla catch.
Yeah, exactly.
Or Mechachilla.
Mozilla, like Firefox?
Whatever they call
Exactly.
it. There's a name that they use for this is the super heavy booster.
Oh, you're right. It is Mozilla. Yeah.
So that was caught, but now what happened? We think the main part of the whole roster, and this was while we were doing the show tonight.
Yeah, this happened.
Literally.
This happened not too long ago. It blew up over the Bahamas, but like obviously it's so close to Florida that there's some things affected. This is a very serious weather person that's reporting on that. Yeah, no. It's...
That's a very official.
This is a Common Threads correspondent there on the ground.
Yes.
Just reporting for us. But yeah.
Whoa! Look at this.
Yeah, look at this.
When was that last one that happened? It was like maybe a month ago now, or 3 weeks ago, over the Caribbean.
We had a full one like this for Starship?
This is that one, isn't it? This isn't tonight.
This was tonight.
Really?
Yeah.
This looks like video I saw for the last one.
I think this is generally how they break up and look.
This is how they look?
This is what fucking up looks like.
It's pretty cool. They look pretty.
Time.
I mean, they do look awesome. Okay, so then obviously we've got the FAA follow-up part to this.
Yeah. There's some flights that have been halted to Here we go. This is the CNBC report.
Taylor picks the softball aviation-related topics for me, but that's great that
dude,
broke.
it literally came up as breaking.
I mean,
we're like trying to think about what topics we do.
No,
for
that's exactly the right decision.
If it says FAA, then I'm like,
Dan is okay. So can we pull up the FAA thing? And I'm really curious Dan's thoughts. Dan is our.
Wait, did you say it's breaking?
It broke.
Oh, it's breaking. We got a red banner.
There we go. The rocket broke. But Dan, from what you're able to see, what do we know about the FAA now response?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I haven't seen the actual news or about where it happened. The thing is that this happens sometimes. I mean, in the history of flight, spaceships have broken up over the atmosphere and created debris recovery areas, I believe they're called, DRA maybe. And there's procedures in place for how that's handled. I think that's what they're called, debris recovery areas. So if you look, there's ATC videos that came out, of course, as they do. They're probably already out for tonight's, but for the one that happened like 3 weeks ago, there's videos that came out already of the ATC communications of like San Juan Center and a couple other controllers giving the information about debris recovery areas, telling them that certain areas are prohibited and having them hold, and then they run out of fuel and they got to come down and they got to land, they got to divert and things like that. So there's a process in place for just avoiding air traffic around a debris area, and then when the debris settles, it's not the responsibility of the FAA to do anything else. So the recovery happens, in the water and things like that. But when it's coming through the atmosphere like that, usually pilots see it, they report it, but the FAA knows about it otherwise, and then they create these debris recovery areas, and that means diversions and or reroutes if available with fuel on board and things like that. And so it's not uncommon. This is just it's SpaceX happening, and it's the FAA, it's Elon Musk, it's the organization under criticism, the agency under criticism from Trump. So we're excited about it. But they've happened before. I mean, in the 80 years of aviation.
Shit blows up.
So shit blows up. We've been launching shit into space for a long time now, and we launch lots of shit. We launch lots of shit that we don't really hear much about, like routine satellite launches to get cell service or whatever else that aren't attempts to get man further into space and things like that, or associated with Elon Musk. So
not to get a million miles off track here, but like how much?
And we're also out of coffee. It's an airplane reference. Did anyone get that?
No.
Boom.
I feel like I get all
coffee
the
at home.
airplane references, but that must be like what was the airplane reference? Go on.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have some unfortunate news. Due to a route miscalculation, we are now 100 million. This is Airplane 2 when they go into space. We are now 100 million miles.
Nobody saw Airplane 2.
Everybody saw Airplane 2, the sequel. We are now 100 million miles off course. Or no, they say we're about a tad off course. Miss, how much exactly is a tad? 286,000 miles. Ooh. And we're also out of coffee. And the whole plane erupts into mania. Anyway,
I'm more of an airplane.
Leslie Nielsen does it better than I do it.
I highly doubt
No,
that.
Dan,
I
give
highly doubt
yourself
that.
some
Don't sell
credit,
yourself
bud.
short.
Come on, dude.
I've got the soundboard. I can
You're up there with the great legend. We had this. I don't know if you guys had this. I just slacked it to you. This is from Fox 35 Orlando. This is just from the last 10 minutes. This gives us a bit more. So this prompted the FAA to order ground stops for multiple airports. I was trying to see which airports because I rock this show with several Floridians, and you guys would know the ins and outs about all this around. Starship re-entering is viewed from Cape Canaveral, Florida.
Cardiologist.
all right. We'll come back to it. I thought you were going to stick at that
strong jawline.
Let's go back to him.
Yeah, what a strong jawline. That's so funny.
Is that real?
All right, here we go. As a result of the incident, the FAA ordered ground stops for multiple airports, including Orlando, Miami, and Palm Beach International Airports, Fort Lauderdale, Hollywood International Airport, FLL as well.
I'm surprised that Fort Lauderdale is not affected.
Well, they ordered ground stops.
You said it. No, he said it was. Yeah.
It was, yeah. Orlando's ground stop had been lifted shortly before 8 p.m. Well, that's like 10 minutes ago. So,
how long was it in place for then? When did this happen?
Oh
shit! Look at that.
It had to be about 20. Whoa.
That's landfall.
That looks like it's fucking landed on condos.
That's landfall. It looks like. Well, the gold dome will prevent all this eventually, or whatever.
The
gold dome.
The golden dome. Trump's
the
Iron Dome.
golden dome. His idea for the Iron Dome.
I think most of them are in Israel right now.
We're gonna have our own apparently, and we'll have to put them around Daytona Beach as according to how many actual encounters with foreign object debris we've had.
So that's interesting. So the launch tower did catch, as we saw. We saw the returning super heavy booster. So that part worked. That's the chopsticks. That's the part that like Trump was losing his mind about. He's like, oh, only Elon Musk can do this, blah blah blah. But obviously there was an issue with the engine. Fascinating to me I love the Starship launches. I think they've been absolutely awesome, especially when you compare the evolution of where Starship is relative to like the Falcon 9 launches, but that are usually the ones that they send the satellite payloads up, because these have what are called Raptor engines on the Starships, the heavy duties, and they are 33, and you can count them when you look at after the launch. If it all goes according to plan, you could look up and you can like count them in the photos. There's 33, and each Raptor engine is 3 times as powerful as the previous iteration of engines on the Falcon 9, and the Falcon 9 only has 9 of those. So you're talking about a significant scale up.
Yeah.
So when people say, I don't know if it's actually the biggest, I think it is the biggest rocket ever built. It's up there with the Soyuz from Russia.
Wow.
We have an upskirt of the Starship right now.
What? Come on. All right. I understand it. There you go. That's 33 big, beautiful Raptor engines, and not all the flights from a Starship they've all successfully launched. You could look up, and sometimes like the first Starship launch, I think had like 8 of them didn't work. There have been others where 1 or 2 doesn't work, but when all 33 light up, it is genuinely one of the coolest feats of engineering in the modern world. And this is really my frustration with the Elon Musk stuff, which is like, for all the conspiracies and all the whatever, this is the coolest fucking company on the planet.
Yeah.
And what Starship does and what they've accomplished, and like talk about like move fast and break things. Like this is I'm not an engineer either. Also worth noting, Elon Musk has not tweeted since this.
Oh wow,
maybe he's working.
A little radio silent. He told people to watch the launch.
A victory lap on something.
Yeah, no, not right now. I think they're huddling, trying to figure this shit out.
Yeah, more on SpaceX. I mean, it is the most valuable private company in the world. Oof. It's valued at $350 billion based on its last round at the end of 2024. Like, it's... Damn. I mean, and now you have Starlink, which is a moneymaker, and the partnership that they have with T-Mobile. So I feel like people are just, like, chomping at the bit for this thing to go public. And I think with Musk's experience with Tesla being public and how terrible that experience is, and also like with Twitter, buying Twitter, deciding to take it private immediately, just didn't want to deal with the public markets. I mean, is there any reason why you would need to tap the public markets, JD? Like, if you wanted to, like, if you were running SpaceX, it's extremely profitable. Everyone's happy. All of your investors that you've kept close to the vest, like, they're very happy. Why would you even ever need to tap the public markets for this? Is it to just get that much more growth and that much more capital?
I think what you just asked is the reason there are so fewer public companies trading in the U.S. financial markets today than there were 20 years ago. We actually have a staggeringly low number of companies public relative to the history of the NASDAQ and the New York Stock Exchange and comparable exchanges around the world. And part of that is that I think, by the time, if you do a proper IPO roadshow and you really got to show your homework and you got to show under the hood, that there's so many other avenues for growth and success now, in part because the private markets have just been boosted to be great vehicles for these companies, that it's not worth all the extra work for a lot of companies. And obviously, I love the New York Stock Exchange. I'm incredibly biased towards companies that list there. But you deal with like, it's 2,900 there. I think the NASDAQ's maybe got around 3,100, but the numbers used to be much more. So to the point of taking, a company private, the only Elon Musk company that is public is Tesla. And Tesla is a little bit of a punchline right now because it's like the worst performing Magnificent Seven stock since the start of the year. So I just don't know if it's like worth it for a company like SpaceX. I'm sure we'll keep talking about maybe it having an IPO, but if you're the world's wealthiest person, what do you even want to go through all that for?
Right.
Why bother? Yeah.
Why bother?
You needed, like, other companies need the liquidity and they want to like reinvest all that public money, but like if you're it's not like he's hurting for investors.
It's a shame though. It is the coolest company, and if he weren't embroiled in his political responsibility now and all these other things, we would look at it objectively as like, if our era, if our generation, or I wouldn't even say generation because that encompasses whatever 20 years now, but if our the 2000s, the early 2000s, like these 100 and 200 years, this is a company that's moving our civilization, trying to move our civilization further into space. on the backs of the pioneers, and we've taken a break from really exploring and trying to go other places. And like, of all the things Trump said, hearing him say we're gonna go to Mars was the coolest thing. I was like, fuck yeah,
Fuck yeah,
fuck yeah. Like, we know, or at least in our lore of what advanced civilizations have looked like, such as the video games Civilization or whatever. You got to get interplanetary.
From what I've learned.
From what humanity has determined is the path forward for civilizations. It's, in some ways, beyond whatever, completely renewable energy. It's interplanetary existence. And if you're a company that's literally... We've got rockets that can come back down and land on their own. Could you have thought about that a while ago? I mean, remember the space shuttle? That was the coolest thing ever, but it's so hard to do. It comes in like a plane really fast. It has brittle little wheels. It has to land at a very shallow angle. All these things can go wrong. Like
Plus
this thing,
gravity.
This thing comes back on its own, and there's nobody on it. We're not losing anybody until these things are fully, tested and so forth.
Yeah,
so,
he's like, fuck it, blow up another one.
blow up another one.
Yes.
There's nobody
Okay.
on
So,
them.
but that is really, I think, the genesis, the evolution of SpaceX is exactly that. It's like, fuck it, blow up another one. Like,
Right.
let's fucking go. And that to me is the advantage that you can have private, as opposed to a public company. We probably have a lot more regulations to do and shit like that. And the biggest problem for NASA right now, because so NASA's basically the history when we say, okay, NASA and the space program. It was Mercury, it was Gemini, it was Apollo. That was number 3, obviously. That's the epic one that put us on the moon. We had the Saturn V. That's the greatest era we've ever had. Then we had the space shuttle program, and now we're in the midst of the Artemis program. Artemis is the new big thing for NASA, and the idea there is we're going to build an equivalent of the ISS on the lunar surface. We're going to do this. We're going back to the moon. We're doing all these things. And they use what's called the SLS. I think it's called the Space Launch System that launches the Artemis rockets. But NASA's approach is the exact opposite. NASA says we're going to continue, we're going to delay until it's absolutely perfect, and we'll do one launch. And then we're going to delay. We're going to go many years into the future before we launch a second rocket. And then you got Musk and the Trump over at the team over at SpaceX. That's the exact opposite. It's like, fuck it, we're just going to blow up as many rockets as we need to, and we're going to keep getting better in the process. And that on your screen is the last tweet from Elon Musk almost 2 hours ago.
Starship launch attempt now.
Taken moments before disaster,
Yeah,
as the
it
kids say.
It appears Shay's right prayer didn't quite work. Oh, that was after the fact.
Oh, that's
yeah, she was a little late. That was the problem.
Yeah, Shay's right. Well, Shay's right.
Shay was
you gotta
right.
say a prayer for the SpaceX launch there. I agree with you both of you guys. It's an incredible company. And so for you guys as Floridians, the other part I love is that SpaceX launches from 39B in Cape Canaveral. That's where the Apollo launches. That was where the Saturn V went to the lunar surface. And SpaceX has the government contracts to launch from those launch pads. So they're not like a lot of other companies that need to build in New Zealand and build in this place and build in Virginia's got a big one. But to launch from Cape Canaveral and from 39B is like creme de la creme.
Yeah, that's pretty.
And that's where a lot of these, not the spaceship is Boca Chica, Texas, but they do their other ones there.
Where they killed like 70 pigeons and then EPA was all over them. One fun fact about Cape Canaveral.
Bird strike?
And hold on, let me get this out. Cocoa Beach. I swear we'll address it. Their area code is 321. Which I think is the coolest possible area.
Cool! I didn't know that.
I didn't know that either.
Yeah, so 321 for people that live in that area. That's their fucking area code.
That's
How
so cool.
awesome is that?
That's
so
cool.
That's a fun fact. Anyway,
I went to the Ron John surf shop in Cocoa Beach last year.
that sounds like a start of an epic story.
Everything is hybrid NASA.
Oh yeah.
Surfing. So it's all like astronaut surfing imagery. It's super cool.
That's awesome.
It is very cool.
How was Clearwater, by the way?
Clearwater was incredible. Also a Ron John surf shop in Clearwater. Had the greatest time. So people talk it up. It's like, oh, it's like the greatest beach you've ever seen. I'm not like a huge beach guy, but it was the coolest sand I've ever seen. The sand was like flour.
Yeah. That Gulf Coast sand is very white and soft.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
saw the
so
beautiful Gulf of America for the first time. It was so beautiful.
Feasted your eyes on it.
Oh, I sat there. I was like, I'm not. Remember the dude called us out on the show last week? Why are you calling it why is JD calling it the Gulf of America?
Yeah, you were a
that's
Trump
so funny.
plant or something. He said.
Should we get down there? Oh man, Pearl was like making fun of me, but I was like, I absolutely love this. I love everything about it. And the Trump T-shirts down there were so fun.
I bet.
So speaking of recent vacations, I was most recently in Mexico, and I was talking to my uncle who's Mexican, and he was down there, and we were talking about the Gulf of America Mexico thing, and he's like, do you know why it's called Gulf of Mexico? I'm like, I have no fucking clue. I just thought you guys like jumped on it first. And he's like, no. He's like, basically all of what Mexico was like through Texas and like Louisiana and all of that and all the way down Florida, that was all Mexico for like for a long time.
Right.
Before like all like the Spanish-American War and everything. So it literally encircled this body of water. So it made a lot of sense to call it the Gulf of Mexico.
Well, that makes sense.
But they encircle no longer.
Yeah.
So,
and to JD's point from a couple weeks ago, it's not the Gulf of the United States, it's the Gulf of America. And that is a true, we're all in America.
Yeah.
Like the entire Western Hemisphere, really. So this is a naming convention for a continent, which makes more sense than a naming convention based around a country. Because that's somewhat more temporal, right, than the continent. You could be, in 100 years, it could be all a different country, right? So then you'd have to change the name anyway.
But JD, do you think it's like, to Dan's point, like a litmus test? Like, are we now like submitting to Trump just because we sort of like that idea?
What, by calling it the Gulf of America?
Gulf of America.
I don't know. I still go back to
Trump plants.
I think you can use it without being.
I think I said this last week or a couple weeks ago. The determining factor for me, and this is just maybe how tech addicted we are, and my brain is, it wasn't official until it was on Google. Once I saw it on Google Maps, to me, it's like that was the stamp of approval. Because I'm not going to take a politician at his word, but like once I saw Sundar Pichai and co. say, "Oh yeah, we're going to change it on Google Maps," I live on Google Maps. Like I star all my things on there.
Yeah.
And then I look and it's like, well, now it's called the Gulf of America. And then, yes, to Dan's question, you show up to Clearwater Beach, and the Trump shirts, the Gulf of America shirts were so funny. Wait, can I send one over to you guys to put up on air if you get a minute?
We actually do have a comment I want to get to, and this is called back to earlier in the show. Banner 3 would be relevant to this.
Would it?
Bonnie Speck saying that considering that 40% of people will hate Trump no matter what, I'm not worried. I believe it comes to Democratic dissent and how a lot of Americans and a lot of how Democrats are behaving in Congress, and there's like a clear divide between Democrats that want to work with the president and the Democrats that believe this is not normal and shouldn't be accepted by any means, and that he's like, pushing a dictatorship forward. So there's a very, very stark divide between Democrats these days. But to Bonnie's point, 40% of Americans that literally hate Trump with a passion. I think all of us have met those people, and they're probably pretty close in our lives, where there are some people that Trump will just never win over.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think...
Thank you, Bonnie, by the way.
Thank you,
Really appreciate that comment. Shout out to Bonnie.
Shout out to
Bonnie Speck. Crushed it. Not the first time Bonnie has commented on our show, I believe, and I really appreciate that.
She actually dropped another comment. Let's show this. I didn't mind all the Dems wearing pink, not even the paddles, but they didn't even clap for the boy with cancer or any of other people that Trump brought there, which, is fair. I mean, they really stuck to their
just to be opposed to him on everything.
You're about to say stuck to their guns, and you're like, Democrats don't carry guns.
They do not stick to their guns.
They don't carry guns.
They stuck to their guns to oppose him on everything.
I thought,
I don't know. It makes them look a little strange. I mean, those
moments are rough with Democrats.
Yeah.
It looks
and
bad.
they were sweet. I mean, you can always argue, well, he's just doing it for, it's a smoke show, or it's whatever. It's to play to a sympathetic kind of storyline, but people have done that forever, and it's when you're there in that moment and that person is there, you're applauding them. You're not applauding, that this is a tool or something like that. And when you don't applaud it, you're obviously, making it more about Donald Trump using that person than that person themselves. And they were there, and it was not a good move.
And that's a person standing in front of you too. Like
that's a person in front of you. You're refusing to applaud for their
literally a
struggles.
child with brain cancer. Like maybe you should.
These are fine, and these are fine gestures. We would do this regardless of the party.
Exactly.
So
it's a standard procedure.
I watched the speech, and I know what it's. I mean, you sit there in the House chamber, and I think it's very easy for your eyes to glaze over if you're just sitting there, and you can literally forget whatever the president's talking about right now because he's up there for an hour and a half.
Yeah, that was a long.
And so I could maybe understand if you kind of tune out. You're sitting there as a member of Congress, like, I haven't paid attention the last 5 minutes. Who we clapping for right now? And you kind of miss it. Did cameras actually catch Democrats sitting during that? I guess they had to have, because that's the whole conversation was Democrats didn't stand.
Yeah, I mean,
or
I believe
applaud
so.
for that. Yeah, I guess they had to And where I would say I maybe respectfully see things a little bit differently than Bonnie is that the pink. I don't know. To me, I lived through so many iterations of Democrats on the Hill doing stuff like this, and it's just kind of like one of these. And it is visually striking, and it's out there to the right. It's just, I don't know.
What was it for? What is pink? I mean, isn't that breast cancer?
Yes, but however, I believe this was
Medicaid.
There was something more specific that they were
defensive Medicaid or something, maybe.
It's Medicaid. Hold on, let's find the answer. That's what we do here for.
Give it a Google.
Democrats wearing pink. By the way, I sent you guys those other things from earlier. Democrats plan to protest Trump's speech by wearing pink. Oh, right. Previously, they've worn all white. You may remember that. Pink for rights of women and families, black to meet the somberness of the political moment, yellow and blue in support of Ukraine. Democratic lawmakers are expected, this is now before the speech, of course, expected to communicate their opposition to President Trump. Pink is a color of power and protest, said New Mexico Representative Teresa Lagar Fernandez, chair of the Democratic Women's Caucus. Quote, it's time to rev up the opposition and come at Trump loud and clear. That's it.
Yeah, do they gotta have a fucking color for everything? Like,
it's the color of power and protest. That was the quote. So it's a general opposition catch-all, which I don't mind because you got to sit there and the thing is, it's not easy to be a opposition party for these things because you got to sit there for what ends up being over 2 hours start to finish that you're sitting there, and the camera could be on you at any time, but you don't have a whole lot of opportunities to score points. Right. So you got to hold up a paddle or shake your cane.
It's kind of a loss. Yeah,
you've already lost.
Yeah.
You're sitting there.
Yeah.
But you also can't go, or you can't not go. I don't think. I know a lot of people don't go to those things.
Paddle or cane. Those are your options.
Here's your shirts, JD.
Yeah, let's get back to the good stuff. Here we go. This one on the left I absolutely loved. I did not make any of these purchases.
I was going to show a child with cancer, so this is a lot better.
So these were all the thing with Clearwater too is that obviously it's spring training season. Clearwater is home to the Toronto Blue Jays and the Philadelphia Phillies. Right. So Clearwater Beach was Philly South for the weekend because you'd hear Eagles chants. There's Super Bowl gear everywhere, and the only thing I saw more than than Philadelphia sports icons was Trump gear everywhere.
Yeah,
every touristy store was wearing them. People rocking MAGA hats all over the place. It's definitely. Are you guys surprised Florida's Trump country as much as it is?
Yeah.
No.
Wow. I heard a yeah and a no.
I just said Dan.
Oh, he said
Dan.
Dan.
I was deferring to him.
I mean,
sorry.
Especially northern and western parts of Florida, excluding major city centers, like that's par for the course. Just as far as where the red votes are, but I will say I was equally surprised with how much Trump, or maybe more surprised than I would have been in Clearwater, Florida, at what I saw in Lake George, New York, which was plenty of stores selling all this same kind of stuff. There were lots of them, and lots of people wearing the shit on the street, more than you would see somebody wearing any other sort of clothing making a political statement. It was all Trump gear, and so it's a rural thing, I mean, certainly in Florida, it's not as surprising, but it's a rural thing outside of major cities in the north as well. So,
It's just we've never had to make use this phrase, which is often associated with the leader of North Korea. But like a cult of personality type. Well, I don't know. I mean, Obama. I remember a lot of Obama shirts.
Had the cool, yeah.
Obama was like a cool, popular figure that people made into a lot of shirts and a lot of bumper stickers and stuff. But nothing like this.
Yeah, it's about an idea that's being communicated, right? Like it's with Trump from the very beginning, back in 2016. The idea was that like every politician that's out there is a piece of shit. You were right. Everyone sucks. Everyone is getting influenced by money. And I'm the only person you can trust because I'm telling you that truth. And
I have my own money.
That was an idea that permeated for 12 years. Is that where we're at? No. 8 years. We got another 3.5 to go. But just so consequential. And with Obama, the idea of like hope and optimism and
hope
at a
and
time
change.
where we were like embroiled still in like the Middle East, and we were looking for something to be positive about. So I think Trump, similar to Obama, captured a moment and knew exactly what people wanted to hear. And as a separate point, Obama and Trump are the best speakers in American like modern history. Like those two individuals in their own right have the way to sway an entire arena of folks into exactly what they wanted to say and exactly what they want them to cheer for.
Yeah.
So I mean, they're just incredible orators, and nobody can sway an audience like either of them can.
Well, very well said.
Thank you.
I do have a follow-up text. An anonymous viewer
Yeah.
wants to not dispute a point that Dan made, but does maybe have an interesting.
Going after Dan.
Dan said the Gulf of America, because it's all America.
Someone texted this?
Yeah, said to me, I like Dan's point, but then it should be Gulf of Americas.
I could fuck with that.
I like
I
that.
could fuck with
That's
that.
a good, Gulf of Americas.
Come on, guys.
I know
We're
Trump
making-
wouldn't do it, but
I disagree. I'm sorry. I gotta disagree.
Trump, but to Dan's point, it's like if you're trying to make it like, oh, it's all the Americas, then you just call it the Gulf of America as a general catch-all. But Trump is obviously making it like the Gulf of USA.
I guess you're right, because Dan is saying that, and he's also like saying that with a wink, like, oh no, we meant all of the Americas. Like we know what America is, right?
I don't think Trump does, but yes.
We should all
like
buy
that take.
oil in dollars because it starts with D, and D is the fourth letter of the alphabet, and
we love the number
we
4.
sell it in
Yeah, of
quarts.
course.
I don't
Let's
know.
keep
No, we cannot go from Gulf of
I didn't make the rules. Just pay me dollars, and you can have some oil.
U.S. dollars, perfect green.
USD, yeah.
rectangles.
Never heard of it?
Do we have any of those? Gulf of Mexico, and then we go to Gulf of America. That makes sense because it's singular, and we just swap out a word. We cannot
Gulf
change
of the
word
Americas.
Gulf of
GOTA.
Gulf of
Ooh, you might have me with that. Gulf of the Americas.
GOTA. Put that shit on a T-shirt
Goda.
and sell it in Clearwater.
Goda.
Goda. Gulf of the Americas. We got there. We got there.
I like it. I like Goda. I'm way bigger on Goda than I thought I was gonna be. I'll be honest.
In the wise words of Dan, I fuck with that.
I fuck with that. I fuck with that heavy, actually.
That was really good. That was really good.
What are you like in high school?
Yeah.
Yo, I fuck with that.
FW, bro.
Heavy. Yeah.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
We make it the rules here. Anything else top of mind for you fellas here during OT you want to jam on? We do have the Florida Panthers with a nice 2-0 lead over the Blue Jackets right now.
That's sweet. 22 shots to 7. I think
I'm good. You take us out, maybe.
My final thoughts are for JD to give us his final thoughts, and we can watch the rest of this game and drink some beer.
All I'm gonna ask is, if you guys would, if you have room for one more Florida Panthers fan. Jack Hughes is out for the season, and it might be an ugly stretch here for the New Jersey Devils.
Here.
And so
He's a Panther.
I'm sitting there looking around, being like, well, it was a good run for Jersey, but that might be it.
We'll see. We'll see. You guys might be in a good spot, but yeah, you are welcome in our camp.
Yeah.
Plenty of room in the cat van.
I
Come
like
on.
that. That is going to do it for the show. We are back with a whole new episode of Common Threads next Thursday, March 13th, 7 p.m. Eastern. Until then, a little bit of food for thought, if I may, for the week ahead. In the wise words of Plato, quote, one of the penalties for refusing to participate in politics is that you end up being governed by your inferiors. Something to consider for the week ahead. That's going to do it tonight. We will see you next week for a whole new episode of Common Threads live from Brooklyn, 7 p.m. Eastern. Have a good week. We'll see you then.